So my question is, since you believe abortion is the same as murder, do you believe women who get abortions, even when their lives or the child's life isn't in danger, should be put on trial for murder? Yes or no?
I think abortionists should be put on trial.
But I mean,
I don't think that women should be put on trial for a couple of different reasons. So the first reason is because I don't think that it is effective in deterring abortion to put women on trial for the killing of the unborn. The second reason is because I think that we in our society have unfortunately gotten to such a point that an entire generation have been indoctrinated to believe, particularly an entire generation of women, since that's what we're talking about here, have been indoctrinated to believe that a baby is a polyp, and so when they remove it, I'm not sure there's the actual mens rea necessary, the actual criminal intent necessary for a prosecution. So when we're talking about, the typical pro-life position here has been that the woman is a victim in abortion nearly as much as the baby is. That there's an entire abortion industry that is geared toward teaching women that babies are not babies, and that getting a baby aborted is in fact a betterment of their life. So no, I'm not in favor of prosecuting women for abortions.
But I mean, there are a lot of women who do have the intent, right? Like if a woman goes to an abortion clinic, they are ordering the murder of their child, in your opinion, like what you would say. So
well,
do they not
again,
have the mens rea?
So I gave you two reasons. One, a public policy one, and one, like, you'd have to show me, you'd really have to show me the case of a woman who went in there and said, I know this is a baby, cut its brains out. If that's happening, then that is infanticide. I mean, that's like, wouldn't you acknowledge? I mean, if a woman walked in with a baby that was 1 day old and said, here's my baby, kill it, wouldn't you put her on trial? But that's not what we're talking about. In the vast majority of abortions, the truth is, unfortunately, that women don't actually believe they are killing a child. They actually believe they are killing something that is non-human and is the same thing as removing a tumor or something.
So, but are you saying that you don't think abortion is murder then? Because there are.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I'm saying that the vast majority of women who obtain abortions don't think that abortion is murder, and intent is a fundamental element in any criminal prosecution. I feel horrible for women who have abortions. I think that it's terrible for them. I think it's a lot worse for the baby.
But
obviously.
I think what's key is that you said a vast majority, right? There are women out there who know that it is a child.
And you make law and public policy based on the vast majority, not on the outlying case.
Yeah, but then you can't make a claim that abortion is the same as murder if you wouldn't treat them the same in public policy or in law.
No, I absolutely can, because there are many types of murder, right? I mean, there's manslaughter.
Yeah.
There's unintentional murder.
I mean, like, what would your standards be?
So the doctor knows. That's why I'm saying the doctor has the mens rea. The doctor has the actual intent to commit a murder, because the doctor full well knows that is a baby in there whose beating heart he or she is stopping.
So indirect manslaughter.
What was that?
So you would put them on trial for indirect manslaughter.
I would put Kermit Gosnell on trial for first-degree murder. I would put abortionists on trial for either second-degree murder or manslaughter. I mean, this is a crime against humanity that's occurring. And if you believe that, obviously, to be ideologically consistent, you have to say that. And this has been, again, the traditional pro-life position. I'm not aware of any major pro-lifer in America who believes that women should be put on trial for abortion.
Thank you.
What would you advise to a young woman who's not married, who gets raped, but does not have access to an abortion, as I think that's something that you believe in? No abortions, right?
Yes, I'm pro-life, yeah. Okay,
so then what would you advise that woman to do?
Okay, so first of all, I do appreciate that you've created the saddest possible scenario for a living human. Is she also disabled? Let's really go whole hog, and she has breast cancer as well. So it's, as long as we're creating imaginary victims. But the answer is that doesn't actually change the calculus, meaning that obviously what happened to this person is an awful, awful, horrible thing, and as I said earlier, the person who raped her should be tracked down, captured, killed, or castrated. So that's number one. As far as the morality of abortion does not change based on need, right? So the fact that she's poor and needs an abortion doesn't change whether she was rich or needs an abortion or poor, because the abortion argument really comes down to, do you think this is a life or not? If you don't think it's a life, you can do whatever you want with it. If you think it's a life, you can't do anything with it. As far as what she does with the baby, that's up to her. If it's obviously going to be an obvious economic burden, I would think that there are a lot of people out there like me who would give charity in order to try and help out somebody who's obviously in that sort of situation. And there are charities that exist for people like this to try and help out. And if you know of this woman, tell me her name, and I'm happy to give her some money.
So I'm just wondering, because there is the health of the woman that's taken into question, and she doesn't have the money to have proper health care, or as well as the fact that if she's in college, there's a good chance that she won't be able to
Okay, the idea that what about the health of the mother? So my view on abortion, again, the morality of killing a baby does not change as long as the baby's not actually threatening the life of the mother. In the cases where the baby threatens the life of the mother, like for example, you have a case where a woman has actual breast cancer and she needs chemotherapy and she's pregnant, but the chemotherapy will abort the baby, which actually does happen, right? That is a case where the mother should, I think, be able to get the treatment. That's not the same thing as an abortion. So they're actually treating the mother for what she's got, and the byproduct of that is the baby is terminated, the baby's killed, basically. I do think that it's important to note two things. One, the solution to something horrible happening is not another horrible thing happening in the killing of a baby, which I think is actually horrible. And two, it's really not good to take the marginal case and then use that to argue broad. So what people tend to do is they say, well, what about the girl who's raped? What about her abortion case? So now let me ask you, if the girl weren't raped and she just got pregnant, would you think that she should still have access to an abortion?
I do, because I think it's her body and I think it's her health.
Right, so you're giving me an exceptional case in order to prove a rule that you don't actually want to defend. So if you just come up and ask me, do I think a woman should have an abortion, then we could actually have an argument about, or discussion about in what cases an abortion was appropriate. But you always, this is what people on the pro-choice side, the anti-life side, actually do. What they actually do is they take the marginal case, they take the raped, woman who has a severe disability, and they say this is all abortions. That's not all abortions. Significantly less than 1% of all abortions are performed on women who have been raped. So if you want to talk about the epidemic of abortion in the country, over 1 million abortions performed a year in the United States, let's talk about the other 99% of cases. When you are willing to agree with me that the other 99% of cases are not cases where abortion should be necessary, then I'm willing to have a discussion with you about compromise. But I don't think that's what you want. I think that you're just using the exceptional case in order to try and guilt me into supporting a broad-based abortion platform. These are two separate issues. These are two separate issues. Sympathy for the woman and sympathy for, how about a little sympathy for the child? Okay, at any point does sympathy for the child come in here? You say I'm not compromising. I'm the only one in this conversation who's expressed the willingness to take money out of my own pocket and put it in somebody else's.
So have you donated to Planned Parenthood then?
What was that?
Have you donated to Planned Parenthood?
No, because they kill babies.
No, they don't.
They kill 300,000 unborn children a year. No, I don't donate to a baby genocidal organization.
My question was about abortion, and I just wanted to know, why exactly do you think a first trimester fetus has moral value?
Okay, so a first trimester fetus has moral value because whether you consider it a potential human life or a full-on human life, it has more value than just a cluster of cells. If left to its natural processes, it will grow into a baby. So the real question is, where do you draw the line? So you're going to draw the line at the heartbeat, because it's very hard to draw the line at the heartbeat. There are people who are adults who are alive because of a pacemaker. They need some sort of outside force generating their heartbeat. Okay, are you going to do it based on brain function? Okay, well, what about people who are in a coma? Should we just kill them? Right? The problem is, anytime you draw any line other than the inception of the child, you end up drawing a false line that can also be applied to people who are adults. So either human life has intrinsic value or it doesn't. I think we both agree that adult human life has intrinsic value. Can we start from that premise?
I believe that sentience is what gives something moral value, not necessarily being a human alone.
Okay,
because,
so when you're asleep, can I stab you?
I'm still considered sentient when I'm asleep.
Okay, if you are in a coma from which you may awake, can I stab you?
Well then, no. I guess not. I mean,
I'm glad you answered that, because I have no interest in actually murdering you.
But that's still potential sentience, and it's still a potential.
I agree. It is potential sentience. You know what else is potential sentience? Being a fetus.
The issue with that. The issue I have with that, though, is that if I'm in a coma and I'm not doing anything to anyone, I'm not causing any issues amongst the world. Whereas an unwanted child may or may not be a burden to people.
Okay, well, there are lots of people who are unwanted, right? I mean, there are lots of people's parents who are unwanted, right? We're a bunch of college students. The problem is that now you're shifting the argument, right? Before you were making the argument based on the intrinsic value of a life based on sentience, and now you're talking about the level of burden that somebody presents as a separate moral argument. Okay, I don't believe that you being a burden on somebody is justification for them killing you, as a general rule.
Okay, last question about your Planned Parenthood thing. So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come when people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor. Like,
Okay, I do care about the mother being poor. I do care about foster care.
okay, but why don't you advocate for that, though? Because
For what?
Planned Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions.
Because, Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform 300,000 abortions a year. They're the leading abortion mill in the United States.
Evidence for that, though.
That they perform 300,000 abortions a year from Planned Parenthood. That's my evidence. They don't dispute that. No one disputes that.
Like birth control and cancer.
I'm not anti-birth control.
I know.
Birth control is extraordinarily cheap.
That provides affordable birth control, which would in turn.
Okay, they're not the only people in America who provide affordable birth control. You can go get a pack of condoms down at the local CVS for $12.
Condoms, great. People need medication too.
Yes, and it's true that most forms of birth control are also extraordinarily cheap on an annualized basis. Unless you have a severe problem, most birth control is very cheap and readily available. And I'm not against people going and getting that from Planned Parenthood. As you may have noticed, I'm mostly against abortion. If you want to go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and incest situations?
Okay, so so here's the question.
It's different, yes.
I mean, this is a long conversation. I'm enjoying it, actually, which is why I'm allowing you to stay. But the question of rape and incest, first of all, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases, they're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases. So if we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that? Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
They're all okay.
Ah, good. Someone who's honest. So, who's the honest fellow? Who's okay? Yay, honest people. Good. I like the honesty. Okay, so all abortions are okay. So, a sign that I can't read because it has lots of words on it. Okay, so I have one question for you and one question only on abortion. Does the vagina, the vaginal canal, magically confer personhood? Answer, does the vagina magically confer personhood? Yeah, raised hands are okay. You, sir.
No, the first breath does.
The first breath confers personhood. Okay, so if the baby is in the womb and is exactly the same size and has not yet breathed, and you take a knife and you stab the baby in the head, a fully formed 9-month-old baby, it is not a human. The only thing that makes it a human is when it takes a breath. It has to independently breathe.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to stick to it, yeah, because I'm also pro-capital punishment and pro-selective suicide. So I'm going to stick with it.
Selective suicide? Yeah, I assume you mean elective suicide.
I mean, elective suicide.
Elective suicide. Okay.
Yes, I'm not going to make someone commit suicide.
Okay, that's good, because that wouldn't be suicide, that'd be homicide. That, by the way, I'm for capital punishment too, because people who kill people should be killed, but babies who have not killed people should not. And this is my basic position on abortion. So let me but I'll get your answer because you're the one who asked the question. Are you willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, just rape and incest bother you?
I mean, no, I believe a woman should have the right to
Got it. So it's an excuse, right? So it's an excuse so that we can say that, so that we can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases. Okay, that's again faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest, here is my basic answer: rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
But are they ever castrated and killed? Most rapists don't even get convicted.
I agree, and that's usually the left side of the aisle because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison. I want them castrated or killed.
So you mentioned how people aren't victims of circumstance.
As a general rule, some people are, obviously.
But how do you explain people who aren't given access to certain things and stuff and therefore cannot advance? Like you cite like single mothers and stuff like that and then fathers leaving them. Mm-hmm. And women oftentimes, you see it all across the country, Planned Parenthood clinics being closed down and stuff, and they can't get access to contraceptives or abortion and stuff that would stop them from being in that situation. But you think that somehow they should just help themselves, but when in fact...
Condoms cost 35 cents. I think they can help themselves. I mean, that's the idea that contraceptives are not available in the United States is absurd. It's absurd. I'm sorry. It's crazy. The idea that you can't get cheap or free condoms anywhere. I don't think that killing babies is the solution to you making bad sexual decisions. End of story. I mean, I don't see why, the the unsuccessful decision that you made was the decision to have sex out of wedlock and then get pregnant out of wedlock, that decision is not alleviated by killing the product.
So, since you're gonna say mothers are forced to be parents, should you then also incite like laws or something like that, since you're gonna force these women to be parents, that force men to be fathers?
Well,
And
there
not
already
fathers?
are. It's called paternity
They're
tests.
not fathers
and
because they walk out and leave their kids, and then you have this, as you cite.
Yes,
all these
absolutely, I'm in
laws.
favor of that. It's called marriage, and the left undermined it. It was awesome. The system of marriage was the greatest boon to women of all time. Then feminism came along and said women need men like fish need a bicycle. And it turns out that women need men like women need men.
That's because we live in a society that's set up so women can't get as far as men.
No, it's because God created wombs.
So women should just, say suck it and have a child, suck it up and have a child.
Well, if you get pregnant, yes, because you don't get to kill things just because it's in your uterus.
It's my body. How about you just stay out of it?
How about it's a baby
How
and you
about
don't
like,
get to kill it
you're
because it's in
talking
there?
so much about how.
I don't care about your appendix. Right? I don't care about your thorax. I don't even care about your uterus. I care about what's in it. The
And I
child.
can take out my appendix if I don't want it. So why can't I take out other parts of my body?
Because they're not independent living human beings.
They're not independently living human beings when they're a bundle of cells.
Oh, okay. So let me get this. At what point? So okay, let's assume that your scientific knowledge is vast. Let's assume your scientific knowledge. So are you also against partial birth abortion?
I think I don't understand why people would have I'm
Are
not
you, at what point does that bundle of cells become a human being in your view?
Sorry.
No, really. I mean, this is.
No,
this is
I
the
just need to calm down for a second.
Sorry, did I
Do you
trigger
want to go to another question?
No, I mean, that is the relevant question. If your argument is that it's a bundle of cells, then the question becomes when it's not a bundle of cells.
Unless it's a threat to the mother, they form term abortion shouldn't happen. But if it's a threat to the mother's health or the mother, I don't see why he would force a living human being to give birth to that.
Because it's another living human being.
So you're gonna kill the mother to save the baby? And
No,
then let the
whoa,
baby
hold on. You're talking about a case where the mother's life's in danger. I don't know what you're talking about.
Care and stuff after they're born.
I agree with you that abortion is an exception when the mother's life's in danger.
But the concept of bodily autonomy means that I don't have to give up any part of my body unless I say so.
The baby is not part of your body. The baby is a baby.
Nurture.
Really, my wife is pregnant right now, and she's 30 weeks pregnant.
Yeah.
And 32. That baby is kicking the living crap out of her. Okay, that is a living human being in there. Okay, and I promise you that it is not a bundle of cells. Okay, I can guarantee you it's not a bundle of cells because that is a baby. Okay, and I'm sorry, but
It's a bundle of cells that is requiring.
you're technically a bundle of cells right now.
You can say no. That is the concept of bodily autonomy. The entire concept of why we
Okay, hold on. Okay, so
We have other questions that need to be asked. You have 10 minutes.
We've gone all down this, but here's the final point. Abortion is a very simple issue. If you believe, as you do apparently, that that's nothing in there but just a bunch of goo, then you're right. If you believe in something called science, that is more than a bundle of goo, then you do not get to kill it just because it's convenient to you. And let me tell you something.
No, science definitely dictates that a fetus, until it can leave the womb and be technically viable, is
What is
a
it?
bundle of cells inside a person.
Okay, so if you can only live on life support, you're not a person. You stop being a person. So if you get in a car crash today and put you on life support, you're on an iron lung. You take off the iron lung, you're going to die. You're not a person anymore. Is that how this works?
If my brain is no longer functioning,
No, if your brain is functioning, but you can't breathe on your own.
then I'm still technically viable. Brain function.
No, you're not, because the machine is keeping you alive. Look, again, the bottom line is this. If you are defining whether something is a life or not based on your own convenience, that is the nature of evil. Okay, defining what a human being or not, whether something is a human being or not, based on whether you want it or not, is
You
nasty.
manipulate science to enhance your own.
You're the one manipulating science. You're the one suggesting that it's like snot.
You
Okay, it's
said
not
being
like
transparent with mental illness, when in fact the DSM-5, which is the definitive psychological examples of mental illness, has declassified
The
it.
DSM is highly politicized and has been for decades. And it was until 2 years ago, it was classified as gender identity disorder of mental illness. Okay, we can move on to questions.
Yeah, because you just don't like what we're saying.
No, see, the difference is I let you talk.
No, let's you actually know
Thanks for
my
coming.
father, but
questions.
you
Any
had the
positive
same conversations with him, and you shut him down too.
In what way have I shut you down? You've been talking for like 10 minutes here.
She's been talking, I've been talking, but you haven't actually answered her questions.
No, I did. You just don't like the answer, and I'm sorry if you don't like the answer. What's up? Whenever abortion comes up, I have a question I've been asking for 10 years now of the Life Begins at Conception crowd. In 10 years, no one has ever answered it honestly. Ooh. Then he says, it's a simple scenario with two outcomes. Wow, I mean, just the brilliance this guy must carry in his head. It's just mind-boggling. He says, no one ever wants to pick one because the correct answer destroys their argument. There is a correct answer, which is why the pro-life crowd hates the question. Here it is. Are you ready? So good. You're in a fertility clinic. Why isn't important? The fire alarm goes off. You run for the exit. As you run down the hallway, you hear a child screaming from behind a door. You throw open the door and find a 5-year-old child crying for help. Exciting, no? They're in one corner of the room. In the other corner, there, by the way, is spelled They''re. The genius writer knows. They're in one corner of the room. In the other corner, you spot a frozen container labeled 1,000 viable human embryos. The smoke is rising. You start to choke. You know you can grab one or the other, but not both before you succumb to smoke inhalation and die, saving no one. Dun, 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 dun. Do you A, save the child, or B, save the 1,000 embryos? There is no C. C means you all die. Dun, 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 dun. He says, in a decade of arguing with anti-abortion people about the definition of human life, I have never gotten a single straight A or B answer to this question, and I never will. They will never answer honestly because we all instinctively understand the right answer is A. A human life is worth more than 1,000 embryos, or 10,000, or 1,000,000, because they are not the same, not morally, not ethically, not biologically. This question absolutely eviscerates their arguments, and their refusal to answer confirms that they know it to be true. No one, anywhere, actually believes an embryo is equivalent to a child. That person does not exist. They are lying to you. They are lying to you to try and evoke an emotional response, a paternal response using false equivalency. No one believes life begins at conception. No one believes embryos are babies or children. Those who claim to are trying to manipulate you so they can control women. Don't let them. Use this question to call them out. Reveal them for what they are. Demand they answer your question, and when they don't, slap that big old scarlet P of the patriarchy on them. The end. Wow. Mind. Pew. Blown. Just amazing. I mean, just the utter genius of this guy. If I had thought of this example, like if I had thought of this hypothetical stupid question, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, totally would have changed my worldview. I would have voted for Hillary Clinton, and I'd be wearing a sticker with a pussy hat on it. Okay, so let's put aside the fact that this guy's obviously a douchebag. The commenters on the Twitter thread are properly puzzled. The reason they're properly puzzled is because he is correct that your moral intuition suggests that you save the 5-year-old child and not the box marked 1,000 viable embryos. Here is why this does not prove the point he thinks that it proves. There are many reasons why this does not even come close to proving the point he thinks it proves. He thinks this proves that human embryos aren't life. He thinks that this proves that we are all liars when we say that human embryos are human life. He says that this proves that human embryos are not babies. He says that this proves that we are all liars. Okay, so here is why this is not true in any sense. So here are 4 reasons. First, moral instinct does not always mean you thought things through. So we have lots of moral instincts. Those moral instincts may be good, they may be right, they may be wrong. That does not provide a moral logic. Okay, just because you have a moral feeling does not mean that the logic is well thought out. So, for example, here's another famous thought experiment. I love thought experiments. I think they're fun. So that's why I'm focusing on this, because I think that it's good for you to get better at thought experiments, and it's fun for me to go through them. So here's another famous thought experiment. This, of course, is the trolley problem. Everyone knows of the trolley car problem. This is where you are standing on a railroad track, a trolley car track, and the track is right at the fork. Okay, you're standing right at the fork. It goes to the right and it goes to the left. On the left, there is Nell, who's tied to the track, and on the right, there are 5 people who are tied to the track. Okay, do you pull the switch and switch the trolley car from the one that is going to kill the 5 people to the one that is just going to kill Nell? Most people say yes, right? Okay, pretty easy answer, right? This is a utilitarian answer. We will save the 5 instead of saving the 1. Okay, now here is the more famous trolley car question. You are now standing on a bridge over the trolley car track, and on the track is tied Nell and 5 other people. So there's 6 people tied to the trolley car track. You are standing above on a bridge, and up next to you is standing Michael Moore, okay, some big fatso. Now, if you take Michael Moore and you push him over the side of the bridge, and the trolley car is stopped by the weight of his grease against the skids, do you throw Michael Moore over the top of the bridge? Most people say no. Most people say there's a moral difference between me throwing a switch and me pushing somebody physically off a bridge to their doom. That's a moral intuition, but can you justify it? The answer is probably not. And what this demonstrates is that most people's moral intuition is not necessarily a thought through logic. And let's give another example, okay? We can give all sorts of these thought experiments proving that the moral intuition goes the other way. So, for example, let's say that instead of a 5-year-old and a box of 1,000 random viable embryos, it was a box of 2 embryos, and they were your children, right? You were infertile and your wife was infertile, but somehow, through a miracle, they've created 2 embryos that are your children, your only possibility of having children, and they are viable, so we know that they will implant and be fine, right? That's the premise of his question. So, do you save the embryos or do you save the 5-year-old, the random 5-year-old? A lot of people would say save the embryos now because they're your children. That's a moral intuition. Does it make it right? I assume Tomlinson would say no. That just because you had a moral feeling one way or another doesn't mean that the feeling is justified. And let's make it even easier. Okay, let's say that you have your 5-year-old, right? It's your child, and it's a 5-year-old now, right? It's my daughter, and she's 3.5 years old. And in the next room, there are 100 screaming adults. And I can only save one, right? Who do I save? My 3.5-year-old or the 100 screaming adults? Most parents would say they would save their 3.5-year-old. Does that make that a moral choice? Okay, this is the premise of every 24 episode ever. Right? It's always Kim Bauer, that idiot, getting captured, and then Jack has to decide whether to save the entire city of Los Angeles or his dumbass daughter. Right? It's like the premise to every ticking bomb thriller is, it's Spider-Man, right? Mary Jane is falling off, and Spider-Man has to save Mary Jane, or he can save the bus full of screaming children. Which does he choose? And naturally, the producers allow him to get away with saving both, but his tendency is to save Mary Jane, right? Does that make it immoral? Is that a moral decision, or is it just a moral impetus? So just because you feel like you want to save the 5-year-old, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're correct. Okay, second point on this stupid hypothetical. It doesn't actually reveal the value of embryonic life. So we can agree with Tomlinson that you should save the 5-year-olds rather than the box of embryos on a moral level, and still that would not admit that embryonic life is meaningless. It would just mean that you care more about the 5-year-old life than you care about the embryonic life, whether they're viable or not. In fact, we can imagine a counter scenario where you care more about the embryonic life than the 5-year-old. So let's take a sci-fi scenario, since Tomlinson is a sci-fi writer. Let's take the sort of Battlestar Galactica scenario, okay? The fate of humanity rests on this one box full of 1,000 embryos that have males and females in them. And now there's a fire on your spaceship. And you can save a screaming 5-year-old, the only child, or, right, it's just you and the 5-year-old. There are no other people alive, right? That's the end of the human story. You can save those 1,000 embryos, and you can ensure that they are born from artificial wombs and they will live and create a new human species, or you can save this one 5-year-old and you can both die alone in the middle of space. Which do you do? Right? So again, every sci-fi movie ever says you save the box of embryos. Does that mean that the 5-year-old is no longer a human life? Right? Because what he's doing is he's creating a false binary and then saying whichever one you choose, the other one's not a human life. I've just given you a bunch of false binaries and then said whichever one you choose is still a human life. So clearly that isn't true. Next point on this idiotic argument that the left thinks destroys all of the various arguments in favor of the pro-life movement. Okay, most pro-lifers already acknowledge that an already born human life takes priority over a not yet born human life. How do we know this? Because the vast majority of religions, in fact, all that I know of, including Catholic doctrine, say that if you have to choose between the life of the mother and the life of the unborn child, you choose the life of the mother. This is, in Catholic doctrine, to give a perfect example from Catholic doctrine, because Catholics are the most strict on this, the doctrine is, let's say that you're a woman and you have uterine cancer, and chemo and surgery are the only way to prevent you from dying from this uterine cancer, and the side effect of the chemo is that it's going to kill the embryo. Are you allowed to get the chemo? Catholic doctrine says absolutely, and the doctor didn't do anything wrong. Why? Because we value the life of the mother, and you are not actively killing the child, you are passively killing the child. It's a secondary effect of the chemo that you're trying to do to save a life. The same exact premise applies in this particular hypothetical that Tomlinson puts forward. And finally, the hypothetical isn't reality. Okay, this is the part that's the stupidest. I'm not even arguing with the hypothetical now. The hypothetical is saying 5-year-old child versus embryos, choose. When women get abortions, they don't have a choice between 5-year-old child and the embryo. They are just choosing to kill the embryo. An abortion doctor doesn't have a 5-year-old child with a gun to their head in the next room and says, well, I've saved that 5-year-old. I'm going to kill this baby now. Instead, the doctor just says, would you like to kill the baby? And the woman says yes, and they're done. So it doesn't hold in any way. But this is what the left likes to do. They pose false hypotheticals that don't actually prove their point, and then they say, if you answer me, you've proved my point. Well, I answered him. I'd save the 5-year-old. It still didn't prove his point, for all the reasons that I just said. So I said all of this on Twitter, and then he basically accused me of being gay and blocked me. So well done, Patrick Tomlinson.